Last night at 5 o'clock, we brought you the governor's comments exclusively when she delivered the news that another $127 would be cut out of that per-pupil funding. She joins us exclusively live now to talk about that. You just got back from Muskegon where you talked with educators there. In a matter of moments, you'll talk with educators here. Let's get right to it. You know what the Republicans are saying this morning. They're saying that the numbers you're using don't match up with the May revenue estimating conference. They're saying that you're trying to force them into some type of revenue. What is the situation?
The situation is that the May numbers are not holding up. Our school aid fund revenues have declined because the sales tax has declined every single month, except for September when cash for clunkers brought a little bit of a bump. So I just want to be candid with people. In time for them to be able to prepare for the school year, I mean, they're already past their first quarter. If they have to take this level of cut on top of the $165 per pupil cut, which we made earlier pursuant to the school aid fund, and then some districts have a third cut on top of that, it's devastating. We've got 24 schools that are right now in deficit, school districts in deficit situation. With the 165, we've got 95 schools that are in deficit situation. Now with this additional cut, we'll have hundreds of schools in deficit situation. They are tearing their hair out. So the ball's in the legislature's court. I want them to find enough revenue, non-tax revenue that's easier to be able to shore this up, to staunch the bleeding. But frankly, there are longer-term reforms that need to happen as well. We need a short-term solution and a longer-term solution.
Let's talk about the short-term solution. Is part of that short-term solution getting the legislature to call for a revenue estimating conference to get a number everybody can agree on?
Well, that could be a solution. However, it takes several weeks to get a revenue estimating conference together. You have witnesses, etc. Nobody disputes that the numbers have gone down. I know it's hard. People want to wait. Normally we have 2 points in the year where we decide whether the revenues are right. And one is in May and one is in January. Some are saying, why don't you just wait till January? But if you wait till January, then you give the legislature 30 days to respond, and you've already cut the schools, and now they get cut. Does that mean that they have to close early because they haven't been able to adjust their spending during the year? The earlier people know what the situation is, the better they can plan for it.
The situation is as it stands. You can veto. You can lie down and veto. You can use your power to send the proration letter. You can't add money back into any of the budgets that you still have. So as it is right now, those cuts would stay in place unless the legislature does something. Give me your best take, given the uneasy relationship you've had with Senator Mike Bishop and from time to time with Speaker Andy Dillon. What do you think the odds are that you're going to be able to get 19 votes in the Senate to generate those kind of revenues?
I think that if people are reasonable and are willing to compromise, then we can get there. I understand not wanting to raise taxes. Believe me, no one wants to do that in a tough economic time. But are there kinds of revenues that are more palatable than others? For example, everybody gets a scheduled inflationary increase in their personal income tax exemption. Can you just freeze it at this year's level? If you just do a freeze, that's $55 million you can direct into the school aid fund. Many people, I certainly don't, consider that a tax increase. It's just a freeze. Can you take a certain percentage off of the exemptions that certain special interests have carved into the tax structure over the years? If you just give them a 15% cut off of the exemption, in other words, they only pay 15% of what everybody else is paying, because right now they're not paying anything, and you put that toward the school aid fund, those two alone almost fix the problem. So the question is, are people willing to be reasonable about finding revenues to save the schools this year and then work on a longer range solution that stabilizes the funding for schools?
I know you don't want to negotiate with the media, but let me ask you this question. There are other budgets you have to deal with and that you may well line items and things out of there. If you could get the legislature to come up with the money, the revenues, taxes, to call it what you will, that you think you need for education, would you be satisfied then not to have other revenues for those other budgets?
Well, here are what the other budgets are, though, Rick. I mean, one is revenue sharing. Grand Rapids, for example, is going to see a major cut to revenue sharing. The city of Detroit, huge cuts when they're already, certainly Detroit, in a very serious deficit situation. What does that mean? That means that you'll have fewer cops and fewer firefighters. You'll have layoffs of cops and firefighters. Do we really want to do that when they've already laid off scores? So revenue sharing is going to take a cut. Another example is the Promise Scholarship. Families have been promised $1,000 or $4,000 if they're going through all 2 years scholarship. They've budgeted for that. To take that away, it's not only harmful to the family, but it's harmful to our state goal of doubling the number of college graduates. Kids will decide not to go to college because they can't afford to take on that debt. Should we decide when our economy is challenged to take away the opportunity opportunity to educate our workforce like that? I don't think so. So there's 4 specific priorities I have in this budget, Rick. One is police and fire. One is Medicaid for senior citizens, people with disabilities, children. One is making sure that we have the Promise Scholarship, and the last one is K through 12, and that's exactly what today's about.
You've been generous with your time. Quick answer. Do you have a total dollar figure that it would take to shore up all of those priorities?
Off the top, about $400 million, I think.
Governor, thank you very much for your time. Let's go back live to you. We'll continue to follow this throughout the day. There will be many more developments as the day goes along. Back to you.